Welcome to video 3 of 3. You're nearly at the end. In this video we'll be looking at how to share your finished video with the world, along with learning some general tips to make your videos more effective and engaging. You'll be starting with page 11 of your handout, which is on the screen in front of you. So let's head into iMovie now. So we're in iMovie, and ideally you have your video looking as great as it can be. My one here is far from it, but that's okay. But we want to go and share our video now. So what we do is we head up to the share button, we click on it, and we are given some options to create files. The one I use the most is this file one, and what that does is it saves the video file to my computer. So let's click on that, and I'm given a few auto options. It's asking me if I want video and audio, which I do. It's asking me about resolution. 1080p is the highest resolution, so I want to keep that. I'm going to keep it high because I want it to look good. Sometimes you might want to opt for a low if it's like a draft and you have to try and fit it into an email, but usually you want to keep your video at the highest resolution possible. And iMovie's made it really easy for you and sort of given you these auto options, so that's great. Then you would click next and you would choose a title for your export and a location on your computer. Now with your titles, try and give it something that you'll be able to find it, and also indicates if it's a draft or if it's a final. If it's a final, but just name it, give it a location, and then save it. And then what will happen is you will have this little processing bar, and as it exports out your video, you will see its progress as a little sort of clock turning, and it can take a while, so it's a good time to go get a cup of tea, check some emails, and come back and look at the destination where you saved it to, and it should be saved there eventually. So this video is about to finish exporting. I can see it's nearly done. It's disappeared now, so I know it will be sitting in my folder on my destination. If I click share again, you can see there is other options. You can make an export for Facebook, slightly different options, and you just go through the process again of naming it. And like I said before, with your naming structure, you might want to put Facebook at the end of this video so you know it's different from perhaps the website one that you just exported out. So there's that. Now you'll see that there is no option for Instagram, and that's because iMovie is for landscape footage, whereas Instagram has square videos and images. If your whole timeline looks like this with portrait footage like this and black bars, because it will be sitting inside a landscape screen like this, when you go to export it, just go up to share, export a file like normal, and what will happen is when you look at the export on your computer, it will have the black bars, but when you actually upload it to Instagram, they will have disappeared. So it can still work, you just sort of have to experiment with it. Likewise, if I put something like this up on Facebook, that doesn't look so good, but actually Facebook is good, and they do something where they add this nice look in the background. So if you have portrait footage like this, don't freak out. You just will have to experiment. You know, at the time of recording, that's the options available, but you know, it all changes very frequently. But have a go. If you do have portrait footage, just edit only portrait footage together export it within landscape screen and then upload it. Now, speaking of uploading to social media, there's a couple of things to think about. You might think, yay, I've got my video, I'm sorted. But before you go into uploading it onto something like Facebook, you might want to think of a couple of other things. One of those things is the copy that is going to go with your video. So this is sort of like the intro that will accompany your footage. Now, often it's kind of like 1 or 2 sentences that will definitely show, and you want to maybe include some emojis to make it stand out. So it's good practice to sort of write that in advance. So here we can see what it will look like when you go on Facebook and you go to add a video. They're going to ask you for a title for your video. This is where you can put your copy and your emojis, and then you will upload your video file that you exported earlier. Now, another thing to consider is the thumbnail. Now, the thumbnail is the image that will show when your video is not playing, so it's the first thing that users on the platforms will see. If you think about Netflix or YouTube, when you're scrolling through your different options, you don't see the videos automatically playing, you see a thumbnail image and then you decide off that thumbnail image if you want to watch it or not. So it's really important to think about a certain moment in your video that is the best moment or represents what you're trying to get across, and you will need to choose a still of that. Facebook makes it easy for you. It lets you auto-generate a thumbnail. It will like pick out 10 for you and you get to select one, or you can make a custom image. This is great if you sort of want to add some text in something like Photoshop and really make your thumbnail stand out. Otherwise, there's this video frame option where you can scroll through your video and select the best frame. I use that a bit. Another thing when putting your videos on social media is you want to think about your timing. Just like other social media best practice, you want to think about the best time to be posting, so maybe not 9 AM on a Monday morning when everyone's really busy. Then when you're uploading to Instagram, you want to also think about the fact that you need to get your video to your phone to be able to upload it to Instagram. So what I do is I usually email it. When you upload to Instagram, your thumbnail is the cover button. So you need to click on cover and then select your thumbnail from there. Now I want you to practice what I've just talked about with your own Facebook or Instagram accounts. Try uploading any video clip, and you might want to have a go at exporting your own video that you've just finished editing. So now we'll look at some other ways to edit your video other than the iMovie desktop option. So on the screen we have the iMovie app. So this is really great if you have lots of video clips on your phone, or you're out and about shooting and want to edit something really quickly. It has the same principles of what we've learned with the desktop, it just looks a little bit different. So we have our preview window here, we've got our play buttons, we've got our add media button here, where we can bring our files into our project. Here is our timeline, where we would be dragging and dropping footage and moving it around. Some of your options are down here, so we're in the editing type option, showing us split, duplicate, delete. We've got speed, audio, titles, color options. So it's really just a simplified version of what we've been looking at, but really handy, like I said, if you have a lot of videos on your phone that you'd like to edit really quickly. So next we have Adobe Premiere Rush. This software works with both Apple and Microsoft. It's really great. If you get really good with iMovie and you're feeling a bit more confident, then I would recommend moving up to Adobe Premiere Rush. You do have to pay for it. It's a small monthly fee, but you get more editing options One of them is a really great one where they make it really easy for you to do vertical and square videos. So if you are doing a lot of videos for Instagram or stories, then Adobe Premiere Rush will be really good for you. It's very similar to what we've been looking at. Got again a preview window, a timeline, some timeline editing options, and over here are all our adjustments like titles and color and speed, cropping. So yeah, a really good option to consider if you get better at editing and want to have a few more options with transitions and titles and particularly orientation like I mentioned. So next we have a Microsoft option. This comes free with most PCs. It's called Movie Maker. It is, of the three I'm going to talk about, the most simplified version. Again, it has a preview window and a timeline, and all your options are up here within tabs, so you need to click between tabs when you're doing certain things. If you're editing, you're in the editing tab, and if you want to add animations, you're in the animations tab. I think it's a little bit trickier to find things with Movie Maker, but again, if you spend time learning it, you'll figure it out. I do also have a course on Movie Maker for people who are pro Microsoft PC users, so that is another option if you find yourself on a PC device and need to be doing some video editing. So we've talked about iMovie and we've talked about a couple of other software options, but now I want to spend some time sharing with you some of the knowledge that I've gained over the years and years of editing and communication PR work that I have done. So firstly, some tips for social media videos. Keep your videos short. The shorter the video, the more likely someone is going to watch to the end. If someone sees a video that's 6 minutes long, one, they're probably going to get bored after about 3 minutes. Two, they might start playing it and decide straight away they don't want to watch it because they look at the total duration and they're put off. So try keep your videos 15, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, unless you're doing something like a training video or a sort of HR welcome to the office type video, thing like that. Those sort of things have a lot more detail and you need to be talking longer. If you're doing a demonstration, for instance, like a cooking demonstration. But otherwise, if it's on social media, keep it short. If you're making a video for social media, you have to be aware that not everyone will be listening with their audio on, so your video needs to make sense without it. So that means if someone is talking, you might want to think about adding captions when you upload it or incorporating titles into the video. You'll see a lot of videos these days where they're title led, particularly for that reason, so that someone can be scrolling through, doesn't have to turn on their audio to understand the message of the video. So we've spoken previously about how landscape videos were popular for a very long time, largely due to its origins of film, and it's just you get to see more of the landscape in that orientation. But Instagram and stories on social media have changed that, and now square and portrait videos are used a lot more, and one of the reasons they are used a lot more is because they actually take up more height in the feed, so that you kind of have more real estate, as they call it. So when you are at the very start of your project, think about, do you want a landscape video or do you want a portrait or a vertical video? I mentioned when we did the titles that you just need to be careful about not placing any titles too close to the bottom of your video, because sometimes they could be covered by captions or other things that social media sometimes like to place on top of videos, so just be wary of that. Another great app to have on your phone is GoPro's Quick app. It has templates for montage videos, So if you've got a lot of footage of your children or your friends at a festival or something like that, it will quickly combine your footage with set music and titles and make it look quite good really quickly. So that's something to check out. Now some tips for filming for editing. So the more you edit, the more you'll realize that you can do certain things with your camera to make your editing easier. One of the things is you should check your camera settings before you start filming to make sure they're what you want to be editing with, as the editing software will automatically use the native footage's setting. So if you don't want low resolution video at the end, then make sure your camera isn't going to be shooting at a very low resolution. Ideally you want to be shooting at 1080p, and then in New Zealand, if you're going to be shooting indoor with lights, you probably want to be shooting at 25 frames per second, because that works best with our electricity system and you won't get the flicker or banding that you sometimes see in videos. It's probably best for beginner editing to choose a resolution, choose frames per second and stick to it, and don't change it up too much because the editing software that you're using isn't really built for that. That's where things like Premiere Pro that I work with normally is really good, because I can have 25 frames per second, but then I can also film at 50 frames per second to do sort of slow-mo, and the software is advanced enough that it can combine them, whereas the editing software for beginners, it's really just set for sort of keeping to one type of footage. So decide on your footage at the start of filming. It's really good if you are shooting a scene to shoot multiple shots, so you've got a couple of options in the edit. For instance, if you are interviewing someone, you might interview them, the camera straight in front of them, do all your questions, and then you might move the camera slightly off to the side to get their sort of side profile and ask those questions again, and then you can cut between their answers to avoid jump cuts. Likewise, if you're filming some skateboarding, you might want to film it out wide, and then you might want to then do some close-up shots of the tricks. It just makes it more interesting to watch. You know, you see the videos that you like and they mix up their shots, so when you're shooting, have a range of shots. When you are shooting, you want to think about storytelling and think ahead about how you might edit the shots together. This might avoid problems in the edit where you realize you've kind of missed a connecting shot or something that transitions into the next shot. So an example of this was, I filmed a real estate video and the rooms were really large, so I did a lot of shots where I panned from left to right, so every room I did left to right. But if I just filmed that and then edited that together, it would be quite sickening to watch, because it's like the whole time left to right, left to right. So then I made sure I filmed, you know, tilting up and down, sometimes just zooming a slight push in the camera, and sometimes just still, just so there's some variation and it's not boring to watch. That's kind of this next point of think of how the shots might cut together as you shoot. And more shots to work with is better than less when editing. So that just kind of summarizes what I've just said. The more you can shoot, the probably more interesting your video will be. Right, now some tips for editing. So remember the power of music and cut to the beat. Use free music or purchased licensed music. Try to avoid popular radio music, particularly on YouTube. They are quite strict and they might take your video down if you're copyright breach. So it's really good to use licensed music where you actually pay the creator a small fee to use it for that one video. If you do purchase music, then sometimes you're given the option between downloading the WAV file or the MP3. I tend to use the WAV files just because they're less compressed, so I would recommend that for you as well. Again, think about your orientation of your video before you start. editing. You don't want to start doing it landscape and then halfway through think, oh actually I'm just going to put this on Instagram, it really needs to be square, because then you've just wasted a lot of time and you're going to spend a whole lot of time rearranging all your footage. And you will also be picking footage to fit that shape sometimes, so you really just want to get that right from the start. Now if you're making a video to go on your website, which is a really good thing to do because videos help SEO, they're really good content for having people stay on your website for longer. But one thing you need to consider is sometimes a video, if it's loaded directly into the back end of your website, can slow down the loading of your website. So often website developers will recommend that you host your video externally, which will mean you need to have somewhere to put it, such as Vimeo or YouTube. I host my videos for my website on Vimeo. I pay a small yearly fee for that. There is YouTube. If you are out to get lots of views and you want to eventually maybe get some ad revenue, then YouTube would be a good option. You just have to remember with YouTube, other people's ads will be being put on your videos, so if you are a bit worried about that, then maybe Vimeo would be better for you. It's really good to back up your footage and sequences to a second location, like a hard drive, just in case something happens to your computer. Once you do a lot of editing, you will know how much hard work you put into it, how many hours, and the small details. So to have to go back and recreate that is just horrible. So try and save yourself that horror and back up your footage. The next one is just watch and save a lot of videos to inspire you. I mean, there are so many videos on Facebook. Instagram is getting more and more. You just, as you're scrolling through, looking at your friends' updates and family updates, just keep an eye out for videos you do like, and then when you like them, think about, why do I like that? Is it because of the music? Is it because it was short and snappy? Is it because of the way they did transitions or titles? And then you can use that to make your own videos better. I mentioned this with transitions. Don't add too many transitions that are the same or do too many zoom in effects. It's a real giveaway of a beginner editor to do that. I remember one of the first videos I edited when I lived in LA. It was of Runyon Canyon, and I pretty much did a zoom in on every single shot, and it was so sickening to watch. So don't be like beginner me and do that. And as you improve your editing, try and get into the habit of creating a new sequence, or maybe it has to be a project with some software, for each major revision. So editors, what they will usually do is they will have their first sequence, then they will give it to the client, and the client will often have feedback and changes. So then we would make a second sequence, make those changes, give it back to the client for final feedback, then they come back and we create a third and final sequence that we then export off. And that just lets us go back and check what we did at the very beginning. If they come back and say, hey, actually I really like what you did the first time round, you've got it all there. Yeah, that's just a good habit to get into once you get a bit better at editing. Now these are some of my favourite websites that I've used a lot over the years, and I hope they are useful to you going forward. So Audio Jungle I've used a lot for music tracks, and I encourage you to go check out the options they have there. They also have different options for licenses depending on what you're producing. Then there is Video Hive. Once you get a bit more advanced, this has a lot of assets that you can purchase, things like titles and things like that, so go check that out if you have some time. Voice Bunny is what I've used when I've needed international voiceover artists. I'm here in New Zealand. It has a few New Zealand artists, but projects in the past I've needed American voices and English voices, so it's been really good for that. So you literally upload your script, brief the artist, They go away and record it, you check it, give them feedback, they might re-record a little bit, and then you get your file and then you just bring it into your project. Really good for animation type videos and things like that. So use that if you need a voiceover. Here are just a couple of websites to get free stock images. They are free, but they do encourage you to credit the photographers where you can, so do that if you can. Yeah, really good, not only for video but also good if you need an image for your website, social media, so check those out. And then lastly is Script Timer. This is just a good little website where you paste in your script and you just check how long it is, so that's really good if you've got a set duration. So that wraps up this course on video editing for beginners with iMovie in this third video. You've just taken in a lot of information, so please practice the skills you've learnt to help it commit to your memory. So the question is, how are you going to use what you learnt today? What cool videos are you now going to make with all your iMovie knowledge? Thanks for taking the time to learn and choosing this course. If you have any feedback or testimonials, I'd love to hear them at kylie@storyorchard.co.nz. Otherwise, have fun with iMovie and go ahead and create some great videos.